The Nintendo Switch has been a fascinating system for Nintendo, and when they first unveiled the system, I think a lot of people were a bit skeptical on it, especially after the failures of the Wii U. The Wii U really failed to capture a mass audience like Nintendo had expected after the success of the Wii, so whatever Nintendo was going to do next was definitely going to draw the ire of some people. When they first unveiled it, it was kind of like, well that's cool, I wonder how well it'll work. But it has been working, and tremendously well for Nintendo, with nearly 20 million systems shipped since the launch of the system in March of 2017. Nintendo has been doing very well with the system, and of course that translates into software sales as well. Games are selling very well. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the #1 selling Zelda game of all time, beating out my precious Ocarina of Time. How can it beat this? This is like the best Zelda game ever, but Breath of the Wild has just been an absolute anomaly. You're seeing tremendous success of Super Mario Odyssey as well, with nearly 12 million units shipped, and just everything Nintendo seems to throw at the Nintendo Switch sells well. But in the same breath, that's also the status quo. Whenever you look at the best-selling games on a Nintendo platform, most of the time they are Nintendo games. Nintendo games never have trouble selling on a Nintendo platform. Where it comes into a bit of a trouble is with third-party companies, and a lot of third-party companies shied away from the Nintendo Switch initially because of the Wii U. Games were not selling on the Wii U when it came to third-party games, and a lot of Wii games that were third-party games didn't sell as well as companies wanted them to, so it made sense for them to be a bit skeptical on the Nintendo Switch. But I've been looking at some data and I've realized something. There's a lot of third-party games that are selling well on the Nintendo Switch. Either they're console exclusives or they're multi-platforms. Some multi-plat games are selling better on the Nintendo Switch than the PS4 and the Xbox One. And when you look at the install bases of those systems, it's absolutely fascinating to me to look at this data. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I've got a couple examples of some games selling very well on the Nintendo Switch, and I want to look at each game, sort of analyze why it's selling so well, and then come to a general conclusion about what all these games do a bit similar that could be the reason why they're selling so well on the Nintendo Switch. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about why these Nintendo Switch games are selling.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my god, it's Stevie Richards! So the first game I want to talk about is a game that's been taking the Nintendo Switch by storm, and I think people expected this game to do good, but I don't think they expected it to do this good, and that is Octopath Traveler. Now, Octopath Traveler is of course a exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, coming to us from Square Enix. It's a very JRPG game, turn-based system, very traditional in how it sort of plays out and how the gameplay mechanics are when it comes to the JRPG world, and I think people expected the game to do well. Obviously, there was a lot of buzz about this game. They released a couple different demos that people could try the game out, and you could sort of get a feel for where this was going. It has a very unique art style as well. But when you look at other JRPGs that are out on the market right now, you can sort of see that a lot of them are going for high production values. When you look at games like even Xenoblade Chronicles 2 or Final Fantasy 15, these games are very, big budgets. A lot of stuff goes into these games, a lot of big open worlds, and Octopath Traveler is definitely a throwback to the simpler times of games like Super Nintendo RPGs. But I think people expected the game to do well. People seem to have a good buzz about it. But this game is doing extremely well. There is a good chance that it will top the NPD charts for the month of July. This game is just selling phenomenally well. The game has shipped over 1 million units worldwide so far, and that's not even including digital sales. And you have to remember, the game was unavailable in Japan for quite a while when it came to the physical market, because Square Enix sort of underestimated the popularity of this game and how popular it was going to be in Japan, and there was a lot of sellouts and a lot of shipment problems, so a lot of people had to purchase the game digitally. This 1 million units shipped is only for physical copies, and we're talking about a traditional JRPG in 2018. You don't see that very often. So Octopath Traveler has been an absolute anomaly for the Nintendo Switch. It is a third-party game. It is a third-party exclusive game. It is a JRPG, which is supposedly a niche market. However, it is selling phenomenally. It is selling better than some first-party Nintendo games. So what's the secret? I'm not quite sure, but I think these other examples will sort of put in some correlation as to what is going on with the Nintendo Switch and why certain games are just taking off on the platform. The next game I want to talk about is Sonic Mania Plus. Now, Sonic Mania originally released in 2017 in the summer for the PS4, the Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch, and a lot of people loved that game. I absolutely loved it. I love Sonic Mania Plus as well. I did a review of it on the channel. Just a fantastic game. They added in new characters, they added in some new gameplay modes and stuff into the game, and really made it the definitive edition of this game. And when the game got a physical release, a lot of people, myself included, were happy, and Sonic Mania Plus, of course, was a big game for the PS4, the Xbox One, and the Switch. Now, we don't have any US sales for Sonic Mania Plus on the Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Xbox One yet. We'll be getting those in the next NPD numbers to see where this game places. But we do have some concrete sales for the game in the UK. And this game is selling so well on the Nintendo Switch that it's pretty fascinating to me. When it comes to Sonic Mania Plus in the UK, 52% of the sales for the game are on the Nintendo Switch, 34% are on the PS4, and 15% are on the Xbox One. So over 50%, over half of the people who bought Sonic Mania Plus picked it up on the Nintendo Switch. And that to me is just absolutely fascinating. Crash Bandicoot has been doing very, very well in the UK, which we'll talk about as our next game. There's also information that if digital sales were accounted for in these total sales as well, that Sonic Mania Plus would have beaten out Crash Bandicoot in the charts ending on August 19th. And that's pretty fascinating because the next game we're going to talk about is Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Now, this game originally released on the PS4 in the summer of 2017 and was a one-year exclusive for the PS4. It then came to the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox One in June 2018. This game has been the top-selling game in the UK for 5 weeks now. For 5 weeks, the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy has been the #1 selling game, and many people are anticipating that it will once again, in the next time that the UK updates their sales figures, which is on a weekly basis, that it will once again be the #1 selling game. And that to me is just fascinating because this is yet another third-party game that's selling exponentially well on the Nintendo Switch. Now, there's no sales breakdown in terms of what it's selling on the Nintendo Switch versus the Xbox One, but you have to remember, in the UK, the Nintendo Switch's market is pretty small, so the fact that it's even selling as well as it has been is absolutely mind-numbing. And a lot of initial rumors and reports have it at about a 50-50 when it comes to the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox One version of the game. However, the Xbox One has such a larger install base in the UK. So these three games are sort of showing a little bit of a correlation, but this fourth game and fifth game that we're going to talk about really start to show this correlation that I'm sort of hinting at, and what sort of games are going to do well when it comes to third-party games on the Nintendo Switch. The next game I want to talk about is an early contender for my game of the year. It was a freaking indie game, a game that was just sort of an afterthought that has sold exponentially well. And that is Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon. Now, we don't have updated sales figures, but the last time we got some information on this game, it was announced by Inti Creates that the game had sold over 100,000 copies. And this was just supposed to be a sort of throwaway game for Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night, but it really hit a stride in the home console market. When you look at the individual sales breakdowns of this game, you can start to see another trend that we noticed with Sonic Mania. The Nintendo Switch accounted for 56% of the sales. Steam accounted for 19%, PlayStation 4 at 17%, the Nintendo 3DS at 4%, the PlayStation Vita at 4%. Once again, over 50% of the people that purchased Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon picked it up on the Nintendo Switch. The final game I want to talk about is a game that I'm not super familiar with. It's actually something I have not picked up yet, but I did want to mention it because it sort of fits into my narrative that I'm trying to spin to you guys here, and that is Hollow Knight. Now, Hollow Knight has surpassed over 1 million purchases on the PC, but in just 2 weeks on the market, it sold 250,000 copies on the Nintendo Switch. 250,000 copies. You guys realize that there are a lot of AAA published games that come out on things like the Xbox One and the PS4. Maybe not, the Call of Duties and things like that, but more niche games like JRPGs and things like that do not see 250,000 units sold in North America for the whole timeline of the game. This game sold 250,000 copies in 2 weeks. Now, Let's look at all of these games. Let's look at Octopath Traveler, Sonic Mania Plus, Crash Insane Trilogy, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, and Hollow Knight. What do all of these games have in common? What do all these games have that's one sort of interesting fact that you could say, okay, all of these games have this one thing in common, because they're all different genres. Some of these are compilations, some of these are collections, some of these are 2D games, 3D games, JRPGs. What is the one factor? They're all sort of retro style. Octopath Traveler, look at that game. It's essentially an SNES RPG love letter. Sonic Mania Plus, it's a love letter to the Sega Genesis and the Sonic games that came out on the Sega Genesis and the Sega CD. Crash Insane Trilogy, a collection of classic PS1 titles remastered for the modern age. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, essentially Castlevania 4. Hollow Knight, essentially a Metroidvania style game in a sort of 16-bit, 32-bit aesthetic. That's the driving force here. A lot of retro games and retro style games are selling very well on the Nintendo Switch. So much, in fact, that they're selling better than it's doing on the PS4 and the Xbox One. But that's not to write off AAA experiences as well. Games like Doom and NBA 2K18 have sold very well on the Nintendo Switch. The narrative I'm trying to spin here is retro style games on the Nintendo Switch are going to sell. But it's more important that third-party games on the Nintendo Switch are selling. Whether they're big blockbuster releases. Maybe they don't sell as much as the PS4 and the Xbox One, but you haven't really seen many big third-party games with parity releasing at the same time since a game like NBA 2K18. Obviously, Doom and Wolfenstein 2 were much later releases. A game like Crash Insane Trilogy released at the same time for the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox One, and both of those versions are selling very well. I think it's very telling about the Nintendo Switch. I think the portability aspect of the system and being able to take these games with you, these games that are usually regulated to home consoles, on the go with you in a portable aspect, is just such a high selling point for the Nintendo Switch. So third-party games on the Nintendo Switch are selling, and they're selling pretty damn well, especially if they have a retro aesthetic. I don't know what it is about the Nintendo Switch that so many retro gamers love, but it's definitely hitting a chord. So I just thought this information was pretty fascinating, and a lot of people seem to downplay how well third-party games are selling on the Nintendo Switch, but when you look at the actual data, and you look at games that are either exclusive to the Switch that are third-party, or games that are multi-platform release that release around the same time or on the same day as other consoles, there's a good chance that the Nintendo Switch version is going to sell well, and it might actually outsell the PS4 and the Xbox One versions. So let me know in the comments section down below what you thought of this video, what you think of all the data, and what you thought of my findings. And thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.